Nobody told Senabrio that the job would change her life. They said it would pay well. They said it was simple. A private household. A little girl who needed routine. A father who traveled often and valued discretion above everything else. They did not say that the father was Roman Ashford. Senna found out on the morning of her interview, when the Blacktown car collected her from the corner of Bloor and Spadina in downtown Toronto, and she noticed, after 20 minutes of driving north, that the driver had not once looked in the rearview mirror to check on her. Not because he was polite, because he had been trained not to acknowledge passengers unless spoken to. She was 28 years old. She had a degree in child psychology from the University of Ottawa. She had $214 in her checking account and a voice message from her brother's specialist clinic that she had not yet found the courage to return. She had applied for this job at 1 a.m. on a Tuesday because the salary listed, and she had read the number 3 times before she believed it, was $12,000 a month, plus full accommodation at the family estate outside of King City. She had told herself she would hear them out. She had not told herself she would take the job. The car turned through a private gate and followed a long gravel road through trees so old and dense they blocked the September sun. The house, when it appeared, was not what she had imagined. It wasn't a mansion in the showy sense. No fountain, no lion's sculptures, no gold lettering over the door. It was a sprawling stone farmhouse, expanded over the decades into something that looked like it had grown rather than been built, severe and beautiful at once, the way places looked when power had been living inside them long enough to become architecture. A man in a dark suit met her at the door. He introduced himself as Mr. Vance, legal counsel and household administrator. He had the flat, watchful eyes of someone paid to notice everything. They sat in a room that smelled of leather and old money. Mr. Vance placed a document on the table between them. It was thicker than Senna's graduate thesis. "Before we discuss the particulars," he said, "I want to be transparent with you. This is a non-disclosure agreement that covers all aspects of life within this household. Professional, incidental, observed. Violation of this agreement carries legal consequences that will follow you permanently." "Who is this family?" Senna asked. Mr. Vance paused, as though weighing how much she had already earned. "Roman Ashford," he said, "of Ashford Consolidated." She knew the name the way all of Ontario knew the name. Ashford Consolidated was a holding company with interests in construction, logistics, private security, and a dozen other industries that newspapers mentioned only when they needed a shorthand for untouchable money. Roman Ashford had appeared before a federal committee 4 years ago and answered 2 hours of pointed questions with the calm detachment of a man who knew the questions had no teeth. He had never been charged with anything. His wife had died 2 years ago. A car accident, the obituaries said, in the brief paragraphs they were apparently permitted to publish. He had one daughter, Petal, age 6. The child's previous caregiver left after 3 months, Mr. Vance continued, and the one before that after 6 weeks. The position requires someone who can maintain consistency for the child regardless of how irregular the household circumstances may occasionally feel. "What does irregular mean?" Senna asked. "It means," Mr. Vance said, closing the folder, "that Mr. Ashford is a busy man with a complex business environment, and the home reflects that. You will be given a clear boundary. The east wing, the child's room, the kitchen, the garden, the playroom, that is your domain entirely. The north wing is Mr. Ashford's private office. You will not enter it. You will not ask about it. When do I meet him?" Mr. Vance picked up his pen. "Likely not for some time. He prefers to maintain separation between his personal and operational life." He said the word operational the way a person says the name of a thing they have grown so accustomed to, they no longer register its strangeness. Senna thought about her brother, Theo, 22 years old, in a long-term neurological care facility in Hamilton, with mounting bills and a waiting list for a treatment that might help him. She thought about the eviction notice folded in her jacket pocket. She thought about the way the specialist's voicemail had begun. "We need to discuss Theo's next phase of care, and sooner is better." She picked up the pen. She met Petal an hour later, in the playroom on the 2nd floor of the east wing. It was a beautiful room. Enormous windows, natural light, shelves of books and art supplies, and soft toys organized by someone who cared very much about order and very little about what a child might actually want to reach. Petal was sitting in the middle of the floor, with her back to the door, carefully dismantling a music box with a butter knife. She did not turn around. "You're going to leave," the girl said, without looking up. They all leave. Senna crouched down behind her. The music box was old, the kind with a ballerina on a spring, and Petal had already freed the mechanism from the base. "What are you trying to figure out?" Senna asked. Petal turned then. She had her father's coloring, dark eyes, serious face, but something fragile in the set of her mouth that looked like it had been there a long time. "Why, it stopped working," Petal said. "Can I look?" Petal considered this, then handed her the mechanism. Senna turned it over. "It didn't break," Senna said. "It just came loose. That happens. We can fix it." She didn't have tools. She used a thumbnail and patience. It took 11 minutes. When the ballerina turned again and the melody played, Petal stared at it with an expression so controlled it was clearly masking something much larger. "You can leave now if you want," Petal said quietly. "I know you're only here because of the money." Senna sat back on her heels. "My brother is sick," she said, "and yes, the money matters. But I'm also here because someone dismantling a music box with a butter knife to find out why it stopped working is exactly the kind of person I like spending time with." Petal looked at her for a long moment. Then she set the music box on the shelf, carefully. "Dinner is at 6, she said, as if this settled something. 3 weeks passed before Senna saw Roman Ashford. She heard him before she saw him. A voice, low and direct, giving instructions to someone on a phone call in the corridor outside the kitchen at 2 in the morning. She had come downstairs for tea. She froze at the bottom of the staircase. He appeared around the corner a moment later and stopped when he saw her. He was taller than she had expected. Broad through the shoulders, wearing a white dress shirt with the collar open, a jacket in his other hand. There was a cut above his left brow, mostly dried. There was something dark across his shirt that Senna did not look at directly, because she understood immediately that she should not. 2 men came in behind him. They fanned slightly to either side. They did not speak. "Mrs. Briot," Roman said. Mr. Vance had probably told him her name. As a file reference, a known quantity. "It's late. I couldn't sleep," she said. Her voice was steady. She looked at her for a moment, the specific look of a man measuring whether a thing is a risk. Whatever he found, he put it away. "The kitchen is yours," he said. "The whole east wing is yours. I don't come through here." "I know," she said. I heard a door." He almost said something. Then he turned to the shorter of the 2 men. "Get the doctor." And to Senna, without looking back, "Go to sleep, Miss Briot. You didn't see anything tonight." She went back upstairs. She lay in the dark with her heart knocking against her ribs and thought about the way he had said it. Not a threat, exactly. More like a man who had been containing things for so long that even his warnings came out tired. She thought about the way Petal had said, the very first day, "They all leave." She came alive slowly, the way a room does when the heat comes back on after a long winter. She started asking questions during breakfast. Not cautious ones, real ones, the kind children ask when they finally believe someone will answer honestly. She wanted to know why the sky in Canada looked different from the sky in photographs of other places. She wanted to know what Senna's brother was like before he got sick. She wanted to know if people could train themselves not to be afraid of things. Yes, Senna said on that last one, but it takes a long time, and you have to be willing to be afraid first. Petal thought about that for a full minute. "Daddy isn't afraid of anything," she said. "I don't know if that's true," Senna said carefully. Petal looked at the window. "He was afraid when Mummy died," she said. "I saw him. He didn't know I was watching." She said it the way children say the things they have been carrying alone for a long time, not for comfort, just for release. The incident that changed things happened on a Thursday in November. Petal had music lessons at a small private studio in Kleinburg. It was one of the few outings she took regularly, and she loved it with a quiet ferocity that Senna recognized as the particular love of a lonely child for the one place they feel competent. They were in the second row of the parking lot outside the studio when Senna noticed the car. A dark blue sedan, parked facing the wrong direction, engine running. It had been there when they arrived. It was still there 35 minutes later when Petal's lesson ended. There was no reason to notice it. There was every reason to notice it, if you had grown up where Senna had grown up, in a part of East Hamilton where you learned early to read the difference between a car that was parked and a car that was waiting. She took Petal's hand and changed direction. "My jacket's in the studio," Petal said. "We'll get it later." "Senna, we're going to the coffee shop across the street," Senna said, making her voice light. "I need something hot. You can pick a pastry." She got them across the street. She texted the number Mr. Vance had given her for non-emergency household contacts. Blue sedan facing west in the lot outside the Kleinburg studio. Engine running the whole lesson. "Maybe nothing, we're at the Boxcar Cafe." 2 minutes later, a response came from a number she didn't recognize. "We see it. Don't move. Someone is coming." 3 men arrived in 7 minutes. One of them went to the sedan. One positioned himself outside the cafe. The third came inside, ordered a coffee he didn't drink, and sat between Senna and the door without making eye contact. When it was over, whatever it was, Mr. Vance called. The sedan was a surveillance vehicle, he said. Associates of a competing interest. They were documenting the child's schedule. Mr. Ashford is grateful for your response. Is she safe? Senna asked. She is, as are you. That evening, after Petal was in bed, Roman appeared in the kitchen doorway. He was wearing a dark sweater, no jacket, and he looked, for the first time, like a man and not a function. He held a glass of water and stood in the doorway, as though he hadn't decided yet whether to come in. Vance told me what happened today, he said. She was fine, Senna said. I just moved us. You moved before the team had even identified the vehicle, before anyone told you to. He paused. Where did you learn to read that? I grew up on Barton Street, she said simply. He nodded once. A small nod that meant he understood more than she had said. I owe you. Mean nothing, Senna said. I signed the ND. Yes. He looked at the glass in his hand. But you're keeping my daughter, and you deserve to understand what that means in practical terms. So he told her. Not everything. She understood that without being told, but enough. Ashford Consolidated's legitimate operations were largely legitimate. The other operations were not, and they generated the kind of friction that occasionally sent men in sedans to sit in parking lots outside music studios. There were people who wanted leverage over Roman. His daughter was the obvious candidate. I've kept her life as normal as possible, he said. The lessons. The school. I don't want her growing up afraid. She told me that, Senna said. She also told me she watched you when her mother died. She said she saw that you were afraid. He went very still. Senna said, quietly, she carries not wanting to be the reason you're afraid again. That's a heavy thing for a 6-year-old. Roman set the glass down on the counter. He didn't look at her for a long moment. Friday, he said finally. She has a recital at her school. Piano. She's been practicing the Satie piece for 2 months. He stopped. I have a conflict. She wants you there, Senna said. Not Mr. Vance, not the security team. You. I know. Then don't have the conflict. He looked at her then, full attention, the way he seemed to do everything completely, like there was no halfway in his nature. You're very direct for someone who has been in this house for 3 weeks, he said. I'm only here for Petal, Senna said. So the only thing I'm ever going to be direct about is what's good for her. He left without saying anything else. In the morning, his calendar had been cleared for Friday. The recital was held in the main hall of the school, a vaulted room that smelled of floor polish and anticipation. Senna had dressed carefully, dark wool trousers, a cream blouse, and helped Petal into the navy velvet dress they had chosen together at a shop in Thornhill the previous week. In the car, Petal was vibrating with a specific kind of terror that Senna recognized. Not the terror of danger, but the terror of mattering. Petal whispered. Roman was beside her in the back seat. He had come in a dark suit, no tie, and he looked uncomfortable in the way that large, controlled men sometimes looked uncomfortable in the presence of things that couldn't be managed. Small concert halls, children's feelings, the specific silence before a performance. They won't forget, he said. You've played that piece every day. But what if they do? Roman looked at Senna briefly, helplessly. Then you play what your hands remember, Senna said, and you make that the piece. No one out there knows what it's supposed to sound like. Only you. Petal absorbed this. She straightened her dress. Okay, she said. The hall was full of parents and siblings and the low murmur of people settling in. The security team had swept the building beforehand. Senna knew this without being told. She had seen the men in the lobby who were not there for the recital. She did not let herself think about what that meant. She sat beside Roman in the 4th row. He sat very straight the way people did when they were trying not to betray anything. When Petal walked onto the stage, Senna felt him go still completely. Petal found them in the audience. She found Senna first, held eye contact for one stabilizing moment, and then moved her gaze to her father. Roman gave her a single, small nod, firm. I'm here, I see you. It was the same nod Senna had seen him give his men, the one that meant, proceed, I'm behind you. Petal sat down at the piano and played. And she played it beautifully. Not perfectly, not without hesitation, but beautifully, in the way things are beautiful when the person doing them cares absolutely. In the 3rd row, a woman wiped her eyes. Senna felt the tight thing in her chest loosen. Beside her, Roman was not crying, but he was the stillest she had ever seen him, which in its own way was more. When the applause started, Petal looked up and found her father's face. He was already standing. Afterward, in the lobby, Petal attached herself to his arm, and he put his hand over hers with an automatic tenderness that Senna suspected he didn't know he possessed. You were brilliant, he said. I almost forgot the second movement, Petal told him, with the confessional frankness of a child who needed him to know she had been brave. But you didn't, he said. Senna hung back slightly, giving them the moment. She watched this man who had been described to her as unapproachable, dangerous, untouchable, and saw instead someone who had been so busy being those things that he had missed his own daughter growing up. She turned away. She didn't see the man by the fire exit until it was too late to understand why she was already moving. She heard it before she processed it. A sound from outside, close, sharp. One of the security team shouted something. The lobby erupted. Senna's body understood before her mind caught up. Petal. She spun. The door to the corridor was open. Petal was 5 steps ahead of Roman, who was beckoning children to the side exit, not understanding what was happening, just trying to follow instructions. And through the side window, Senna could see a figure, a vehicle, a door already opening from the outside. It was not the school aide. Senna covered the distance in seconds she couldn't account for later. She hit the corridor door hard, got between Petal and the exit, and drove them both sideways into the alcove under the staircase, going down on one knee to cover the child with her body, pressing Petal's face into her shoulder. The sound that followed was enormous, and then the world went briefly sideways. She felt something strike her arm, the edge of the door, she thought later, flung open by the crash of the security vehicle in the side driveway. Her left arm went numb from the elbow down. She held on with the right. "Don't look up," she said to Petal. Her voice was very calm. She was surprised by that. It lasted 30 seconds, perhaps less. Then Roman was there, pulling the staircase door open, and she felt his hands, both hands, certain and huge, close over her shoulders from behind, taking inventory. "Is she hurt? Is the child hurt? What happened? What did you see? Tell me." "I'm fine," Senna said. "She's fine, Senna." His voice was completely different. She turned and saw something in his face she hadn't seen before. Not fear exactly, because she didn't think he went to fear directly. Something prior to fear is made of. "I said I'm fine," she said. "Is it over?" "It's over." "Then I need you to take her." She transferred Petal, who was shaking silently with a child's tremendous self-control, into Roman's arms. He held her against his chest and closed his eyes briefly, and Senna looked away because that was not for her to see. She did not find out until they were in the car, until she tried to lift her left arm to adjust her seatbelt, that the numbness was not from the impact. The private medical facility was in an industrial building off Highway 400, one of 3 addresses Mr. Vance had added to her emergency contacts on the first day with no explanation beyond. If it's urgent and you can't go to a hospital, go here. She had wondered about that, at the time. She had stopped wondering about it. The doctor was a small, efficient woman named Dr. Fawcett who worked with the particular brisk kindness of a person who had seen a great deal and stopped performing surprise. The break was a clean fracture of the left radius, just above the wrist, sustained when the exterior door had swung against her at force. Not a bullet wound, not what it could have been. Dr. Fawcett set it and casted it in under an hour. Roman was in the hall outside. She knew it the way you knew things in rooms that were otherwise too quiet. When she came out, he was standing against the wall with his arms crossed and his jaw set, and she could tell by the line of his shoulders that he had been standing exactly like that for the entire hour. "It's a fracture," she said. "Radius. Clean break," Dr. Fawcett's words. "I'll be inconvenient for 6 weeks. You pushed her out of the path," he said. "Of the door. She was heading the wrong direction. Senna." He said her name, not Miss Brio, for the first time, and the shape of it in his voice was strange and specific, like something he hadn't meant to do. "You could have been on the other side of that door." "I wasn't thinking about the door," she said. "I saw her and I moved." He was quiet for a long moment. The hallway was fluorescent and cold and smelled of disinfectant. "Who came for her?" Senna asked. "Boyd Carrington," Roman said. "A man who has been trying to extract leverage from me for 8 months. He used the recital as an opportunity. He had someone inside the school's events staff who told him about the recital." Roman's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I'm working on that." "Someone inside." Senna said yes. She thought about it. Mr. Vance made the reservation at the recital hall. He handled the school communication. Roman looked at her. She could see him doing the calculation, wanting to dismiss it, unable to. "He's been with me for 11 years, Roman said. "I know," she said. "That's not the same thing as loyal." He turned away. He walked to the end of the hallway and stood there with his back to her. She gave him the moment. When he turned back, something in his face had reorganized. Whatever it was, she had seen it happen. "Petal is at the estate," he said. "She's asking for you. I'll come now." "She made you something," he said. "In the car. On the back of the recital program. She wouldn't let the security team see it." He reached into his jacket pocket and held out a folded piece of glossy paper. Senna opened it carefully with her good hand. Petal had drawn 2 figures, one tall, one small, holding hands surrounded by what appeared to be stars or possibly flowers. Underneath, in the large, effortful printing of a 6-year-old, "You stayed." Senna folded it closed. She did not trust her voice for a moment. "She draws stars like that," Senna said finally. "We did a whole project on constellations last week." Roman was watching her. "She doesn't draw for people," he said. They drove back to King City in the middle vehicle of the convoy, the way they always did. Senna sat beside Petal, who had fallen asleep against her good shoulder. Roman sat across and looked at them for a long time without speaking. He confirmed 3 days later that it had been Mr. Vance, not from greed, from debt, and from a man named Carrington who collected those. The confirmation came from someone within Carrington's operation, who had been persuaded to share what he knew, and Senna chose not to ask the specific shape of that persuasion. What mattered was the aftermath. Roman sat in the kitchen, her kitchen, the East Wing, the place he did not go, and he sat there at 10 in the evening with his jacket over the back of the chair and his hands around a cup of tea that she had made, and he looked like a man who had been carrying a load for so long that the putting down of it was almost worse than the weight. "Vance knew everything," he said. "The schedule, the staff, the contacts." He stopped. He knew about Theo. Senna went still. "What? Your brother?" "The facility in Hamilton." Romanton's team had it. They were going to use it. Threaten the care facility's funding, or worse, to keep you compliant and get you to pass information about the estate. She sat down. She hadn't been going to sit, but her body made the decision. "Carrington is dealt with," Roman said carefully. "He won't approach Theo's facility, or you, or anyone connected to this house." She looked at him. She did not ask what dealt with meant. "The facility sent me an updated payment confirmation this morning," he continued, with the precision of a man who had prepared this. "The outstanding balance on Theo's next treatment course has been cleared, anonymously. I'm telling you now so you're not confused by the paperwork." Senna stared at the table. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "You broke your arm keeping my daughter from a man who was trying to use her against me," he said. "I'm aware of what I did and didn't have to do." She looked up at him. He was watching her with that full attention quality she had come to understand was not intensity for its own sake. It was what careful people looked like when they had decided to stop being careful about one thing. "I need to ask you something," he said, "and I need you to answer outside of the contract. Outside of the employment." "Just okay," she said. "Why did you stay?" he asked. "You had enough information inside of the first month to understand what this house was. Most people would have taken the first excuse and left." "Petal," she said immediately. "Yes," he said. "And?" She looked at the cup of tea in front of her. "And I'm not afraid of complicated," she said finally. "I grew up complicated. I understand people who have a whole version of themselves that they keep behind a locked door because it's the only way they know how to protect the things they love." The kitchen was quiet. The old house made its settling sounds around them. "The people who work for me," he said, slowly, "are loyal because they're paid to be, or because they owe me something, or because they're afraid of what happens if they're not. Vance worked for me for 11 years and sold me for a debt." He paused. "You worked for me for 3 months and moved in front of a door for my daughter without thinking." "She's not a door," Senna said. "She's a child who told me on the first day that everyone leaves." His face changed. It was the way faces changed when a thing that had been said in a different context arrived in the right one. "She's going to be okay," Senna said quietly. "She's brave, Roman. She gets that from you. But she needs more of you than she's getting right now." He looked at the table for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "I know." She gave him the silence. "There's a trip she's been asking about," he said. "She found a book about the Northern Lights. She wants to go to Yukon in January. She's mentioned it," Senna said carefully. "I want you to come," he said. "Not as staff, as whoever you are." She held that. "Whoever I am," she repeated. "I'm not good at this," he said. "I want you to understand that in advance. I am not a simple person, and this is not a simple life, and I have made a great number of choices over the years that I cannot undo. But I'm aware that the way this house has been running is not." He stopped. Tried again. "Petal deserves better than a fortress. She deserves a life that has warmth in it, and I have been trying to give her that, but I don't." He looked at her directly. "I don't know how to do it alone." "You wouldn't be asking me to show you how," she said. "I can't show you how. No, you'd be asking me to do it with you." "Yes." The distinction was quiet, but it was the whole thing, and he knew that she understood it. She thought about Petal asleep upstairs with the cast on her drawings because she had pressed her crayon too hard. She thought about her brother Theo, and the voicemail she had finally returned, and the specialist who had said, with the specific careful optimism of a person who had learned to be careful with hope, that the new treatment was promising. She thought about the way Roman Ashford had looked in the lobby of the recital hall with his daughter in his arms and his eyes closed, and how she had known then that the hard exterior of him was not what he was. It was what he had made himself in order to survive. It was not the same as what was inside. "January," she said, "is a long way off." "It," he said, "a lot can happen. It can." "Are you asking me to decide right now?" she asked. He almost smiled. Not quite, but something at the edge of his expression moved toward it. "No," he said. "I'm asking you to consider it." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she stood up from the table and picked up her cup with her good hand. "Then I'll consider it," she said. She was at the door of the kitchen when he spoke again. "Senna." She turned. "Thank you," he said. Not for any one thing, she understood that. "Good night, Roman," she said. She went upstairs. She checked on Petal, sleeping deeply, one hand flung over the edge of the bed with the utter abandonment of a child who felt safe. She straightened the blanket. She sat on the edge of the chair by the window for a few minutes and looked at the dark garden. She thought about what her mother had said to her once, when they were very young and the neighborhood was hard, and the world seemed like it wasn't going to give them anything. You don't wait for the ground to stop moving. You learn to walk on ground that moves. She understood now what she hadn't then, that it wasn't advice about resilience. It was advice about love. 4 months later, the Ashford estate in King City had changed the way places changed when someone finally opened the windows. Not visibly. The iron fence was still there, the patrols still moved through the perimeter at intervals. Senna had learned without trying to. But something inside the walls had exhaled. The kitchen had photographs on the refrigerator. Petal had insisted. She had a specific arrangement system that she enforced with great seriousness. There was a drawing of a piano. There was a picture from Yukon, the three of them in parkas at the edge of a frozen lake. The northern lights reflected in Petal's upturned face in a green wash so beautiful it looked invented. Roman was in the doorway the first morning they were back, watching Petal tape that photograph to the refrigerator door with the focused care of a small person who understood that some moments deserved to be kept. He looked at Senna over Petal's head. She looked back. She had not said yes to anything in January, beyond the trip. He had not asked her to. They were learning something together that neither of them had a language for yet, in the careful, deliberate way of people who had been burned before and did not intend to be careless with whatever this was. But Petal, with the uncanny perceptiveness of children who have spent too long watching adults, had said to her one morning over breakfast, with total matter-of-factness, "When you and Daddy are married, can we have a dog?" Senna had put down her coffee cup very carefully. "That is a very long series of assumptions," she said. Petal had shrugged, unbothered. "I'm just asking about the dog," she said. Senna had looked up and found Roman leaning in the doorway with that almost smile. The one she had started to understand was the real one, the one he didn't know how to produce on demand. He looked away first. She looked away second. There was no fortress now. There was just a house, complicated and warm, full of a little girl's drawings and a man who was learning, slowly, how to be someone other than untouchable. And there was Senna, who had arrived looking for a way to save her brother and found, without planning it, something harder to name and harder to leave. She had not come here expecting to belong anywhere. But some things don't ask for your expectations. Some things just ask if you're staying. And she was.